Welcome to the second module in the Get Licensing Ready track, which helps you to prepare for the Software Asset Management Exam 70-713, which was released in April 2017. There are 5 modules in this track which take you through all of the topics in the exam, so let's take a look at those now. Here are the modules, and you can see some percentages aligned with each module, which show you the estimated amount of questions that there will be on each of these topics in the exam. Each module has a video to teach you the necessary topics if you're new to software asset management, and an exam to check that you remember the key points and can apply your knowledge to scenario-based and factual questions. Your preparation for the exam might consist of watching all of the videos and then trying out the questions, or just working through the exams to see if you have any areas of weakness. You can watch the videos at any time, of course. So what's included in the exam? Well, the first module covers understanding what the SAM optimization model, or SOM, is, and how it's used to assess an organisation's SAM maturity. This is a really good first module since the SOM is referred to in all of the other modules. Module 2 is entitled Manage Software Licenses. We'll start this in a moment, and it's going to take us through the main activities of a SAM baseline review. So that's collecting inventory and license entitlement information and performing a reconciliation. Module 3 then goes into depth in some of the areas around data collection, and we'll look at topics such as ensuring completeness of data and resolving inventory discrepancies, as well as managing SAM reporting requirements. Then Module 4 is about setting up a SAM program and making SAM part of the infrastructure of an organisation. At this point, we'll look at the importance of securing executive sponsorship and funding, and then how to design, implement and maintain a SAM program, as well as creating and maintaining a SAM program improvement plan. And finally, Module 5 is about managing the software asset lifecycle, and we'll look at managing request, acquisition, deployment and retirement processes, as well as how to track consumption and how to optimize assets. But let's get started now with the content of Module 2. So this module is entitled Manage Software Licenses, and it's going to take us through the main activities of a SAM baseline review. So that means collecting inventory and license entitlement information and performing a reconciliation. Let's take a look at our agenda. As we've said, there are 3 main areas for us to consider in this module. First of all, we'll look at inventory, and that's going to include the tools that are used as inventories across hardware and software are compiled. And of course, today that's software both on premises and in the cloud. And the final part of inventory is validating its accuracy, and we'll look at some ways that you might want to consider doing that. Then we'll come to gathering license entitlement information from across an organisation. And the final part of this module brings these together, of course, with reconciliation, where we've got a picture of what's deployed and what an organisation is entitled to, and we can match these to produce a report such as the effective licence position, which will give a view of where the organisation is under-licensed and non-compliant, or over-licensed and perhaps wasting money on unnecessary software purchases. So let's get started with some of the inventory tools that you might choose, and we're going to look at 2 Microsoft tools, the Map Toolkit and System Center Configuration Manager. We'll start with the Map Toolkit, or the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit to give it its full name. The Map Toolkit performs 4 key functions, 2 of which help us with our inventory tasks and 2 of which help us with planning tasks. Now we're going to look at the 2 inventory type functions in this module for obvious reasons, and then we'll return to look at the remainder of the Map Toolkit functionality in Module 4 when we're looking at planning as part of setting up a SAM program. So firstly, the Map Toolkit can provide a network-wide inventory that scales all the way from small businesses to large enterprises. It does this using technologies already present in many organisations' IT environments and collects and organises system resources and device information from a single network computer. However, perhaps the favourite part of the Map Toolkit for its many fans is the fact that it is free, so there are absolutely no licensing requirements and it's agentless. Inventory tools often require administrators to first deploy software agents on all the computers to be inventoried, but this tool doesn't. Then it has software usage tracking capabilities for Microsoft Server products such as Windows Server, SharePoint and Exchange Server, and SQL Server. You can run reports at any time to assess current software usage and client access history in an environment, which helps in managing the server and CAL licenses required in an organization. Here's a screenshot of the map toolkit with the usage tracking that you can enable. The other tool we'll consider here is System Center Configuration Manager, often affectionately called Config Manager, of course. This is a much broader offering than the map toolkit, and it offers a management console with a whole set of tools that are useful to enforce compliance across devices in an organization. Again, at this point, I just want to focus on the parts of System Center Configuration Manager that help us with the inventory and associated activities. With System Center Configuration Manager, an agent is installed on the devices to be managed. An IT administrator enables hardware and/or software inventory in the Config Manager console and sets the schedule, and then the clients send relevant inventory information. It's worth noting that when inventory is run on a client device, the first report is a full inventory, but subsequent reports only contain delta inventory information. That IT administrator can also enable metering for the clients, which means that the usage of Windows desktop apps is monitored. When this is combined with data from the software inventory, there are some rather interesting insights available. For instance, you can see how many copies of a particular app have been deployed to PCs in an organization, and amongst those PCs, you can determine how many users actually run the app. You can see that the last time that they used it, so if they haven't used it for a while, you might choose to uninstall the software, and then the licensing requirements are either reduced or you could reassign the license to another user or device. How long should you wait before you do this? Well, it's going to depend on a particular organization, of course, but from a licensing perspective, a good rule of thumb might be 90 days, since at that point a license may be reassigned from one user or device to another. And finally, licensing of the tool itself. Config Manager does require client management licenses, either for a device or a user. Customers who are licensed for the Core or Enterprise CAL suite have the Config Manager CMLs included in that, so look out for that. Note that although you install the management software on a server which carries out the management tasks, there are no additional licensing requirements. The rights to install that software are included with the CMLs. So the first task in collecting inventory information is to choose a tool, and we've just talked about the two Microsoft tools that exist to gather inventory information. But how might you choose between them? Well, we saw that Config Manager is a broad set of tools suitable for managing devices across a large organization from a management console with sophisticated inventory and metering tools. However, it does require the installation of an agent, and it does require a license. So the map toolkit is attractive when the technical requirements aren't so sophisticated, and having a free agentless solution is a higher priority. Before the inventory is started, you'll need to decide on the scope of it. Are we looking for all software across all vendors? Are we interested in both the physical and virtual infrastructures? Are mobile devices to be included? Will all locations in the business be in scope? At this point, it's also worth assessing the challenges you may face. Can you access all the locations that you need to? Are you allowed to install agents on all the devices you need to? And so on. Let's return to the SAM optimization model, the SOM, that we looked at in Module 1 of this track. There we saw that there are 10 key competencies which allow an organisation to be benchmarked in terms of their SAM maturity, and the SOM gives an actionable roadmap to increase maturity for these competencies. Now there is a competency related to inventory which we need to look at, which is the hardware and software inventory competency. And the key question that's asked is, what percentage of user PCs and servers are included in a centralized software inventory, or a CMDB, which is a configuration management database, which is populated by a software tracking tool? And you can see that if an organisation has less than 68% of their assets in a central inventory, then they should be classified as basic for this competency. While at the standardised level, they have between 68 and 95% of assets in inventory, moving up to between 96 and 99% at the rationalised level, and then over 99% at the dynamic level. Validating the accuracy of inventory information is important, and perhaps taking a device to see if what is installed on it is what is being reported by the inventory tool is a good thing to do on a sample of devices covered by the inventory collection process. Whatever inventory tool you use, check that the data is complete enough. It's not enough to just report an installation of Microsoft Word. You have to know the version, the edition, and whether it's a standalone product or part of a suite. Another idea, you might also want to follow up on any recent uninstallations to make sure that minor elements of code have been removed from the devices. Patches and add-ons might not have been removed, and the inventory tools could report full installations of the products in those cases. And another task to carry out at this stage is to independently verify specified license metrics. You could check a reported user count against HR employee records or reported devices against Active Directory, for example. And as we look to assess and improve SAM maturity, there is a SOM competency here as well, with the question: how often do you reconcile software inventories with other sources to verify the accuracy of assumed license metrics? And as organisations mature in this competency, you can see that they move from doing everything manually with no inventory tools to an annual check of the inventory at the standardised level, a quarterly one at the rationalised level, and then there will be dynamic discovery tools providing near real-time deployment details at the dynamic level. We've looked so far at the process of gathering inventory information so that we know what's actually deployed in an organisation. It's now time to see, in effect, what should be installed. This means finding license entitlement records. Many businesses will acquire most of their Microsoft licenses through a volume licensing agreement, and there are some useful tools to show license entitlement information. The first one to know about is VLSC, the Volume Licensing Service Centre. As organisations make licensing purchases through their volume licensing agreements, this online portal is updated with the data, and it's a valuable source of information. The Microsoft License Statement is another source of information that should be used. This is an Excel spreadsheet that is requested from Microsoft that gives a view of the licenses that Microsoft consider that a customer has acquired at any moment in time. In an ideal world, both of these sources of information should match exactly. In the real world, both sources are used to gain the full licensing entitlement position. However, not all software in an organisation is purchased through a volume licensing program, and there will be other software installed that needs to be accounted for that was acquired through the OEM and FPP channels, so pre-installed on a device or bought as a full packaged product in a retail store. Proof of license information needs to be gathered for this type of software, and that's going to be a manual process, finding certificates of authenticity, invoices and receipts, and printed licensing documentation. To assess SAM maturity in the license entitlement records competency, you need to answer this question. What percentage of procured software licenses are recorded in a license entitlement inventory? And you can see it suggests there that's a central repository or tracking of all licenses owned and or previously acquired. Here you can see at the basic level, procurement will match contracts and purchasing information, and these records won't be accessed by IT. Whereas, as an organisation moves to the standardised level, complete entitlement records exist across the organisation. Improving on that, at the rationalised level, entitlement records are reconciled with vendor records, and organisations may then work towards the dynamic level, where the SAM entitlement system interfaces with vendor entitlement to track usage. And the final part of this module focuses on the reconciliation task, where the installations of software are matched up to the entitlement data. Now, this could be done manually, of course, but organisations typically use some sort of license management tool where inventory and entitlement data is uploaded and the reconciliation is done by the tool. This results in reports such as the effective license position report that we spoke about at the beginning of this module, which will give a view of where the organisation is under-licensed and non-compliant or over-licensed and perhaps wasting money on unnecessary software purchases. There is a SOM competency 2 for reconciliation, where the question is asked, how often do you reconcile software deployments, that's the usage, to software entitlements, that's the purchases, and it reminds us that software entitlements are software licenses owned or previously acquired. This is similar to the accuracy of inventory competency that we looked at a moment ago, since it starts off with ad hoc activity at the basic level and then moves to annual and quarterly sign-off at the standardized and rationalized levels. And by the time the dynamic level is reached, system reconciliations and IT asset management reports are available on demand. As usual, at the end of the module, let's summarise by reviewing the exam topics that you will be tested on. Firstly, there are questions on performing the inventory, and you'll also need to know about the tools we discussed in this section, the MAP Toolkit and System Center Configuration Manager. Then you need to know about validating inventory accuracy, and that includes verifying specified license metrics. We talked about comparing user counts to HR employee records, for example. The next area is gathering license entitlement records, and here you'll need to know about VLSC and the MLS, as well as required proof of purchase for FPP and OEM software too. And finally, reconciliation, where the typical output is that effective license position report. That concludes our second module in the 70-713 exam preparation track. Your next task should be to take the short test associated with this module to check that you've understood and remembered the key points and that you can also apply your knowledge to scenario-based and factual questions. Then join me on the next module, which you can see is entitled Coordinate Data Collection Technologies, and which goes into depth in some of the areas around data collection, where we'll look at topics such as ensuring completeness of data, resolving inventory discrepancies, as well as managing SAM reporting requirements.